Today, we're getting under the hood of women's health with Dixie, a passionate health and well-being educator, consultant, former award-winning beauty and wellness founder, and the co-founder of Life in the Pause. She supports women by creating resources and spaces that promote health and vitality. Dixie will be getting under the hood of post-menopause.
So I was 50 at the time. My daughter had just gone off to university. She first year of college, and I was home. I was very lonely. And on October the 23rd, because I write things down, I write everything down. I know when my last period was. And so I was able to track the 12 months. So on October the 23rd of 2022, I had my last period, and that was it. Menopause has changed my life, my perspective in terms of my health. It's given me a whole new respect for my body, and in terms of where I was 4 years ago and where I am now. And I say that because 4 years ago, I went to take out additional life insurance, and my doctors said to me, well, not my doctors, the insurance agents quoted me a price of 150 some odd dollars. And when the results came back, all of the test results, et cetera, they were like, wow, this doesn't happen much in our agency, but you have the health of an 18-year-old, a healthy 18-year-old. And so we have to reduce your insurance to $53. And I was like, so I was so excited, so happy. I felt so energized. And then post-menopause kicked in and everything changed. The symptoms started to come. Most of them, I had no idea what was happening. The anxiety came with it as well. And I think because I didn't know what I was dealing with, I would make trips to the emergency room. And of course, every time I went to the emergency room, everything was fine. They know me in the emergency room now because last year I was there 3 times. But I insisted that, listen, this is unusual for me. How I'm feeling is unusual, and I need to know that it's nothing serious. So please do your exams, whatever you have to do your diagnostics. But it's made me hyper vigilant about my health because things I took for granted prior, I do not dare take it for granted now because of the changes that are associated with postmenopause and because of the decline in estrogen and hormone levels. I know that there can be serious things happening if I don't tend to them. So now everything's got my attention immediately. And with that in mind, as things happen, I am in awareness. I acknowledge that they're happening, and I'm taking action. And if the action is go to the emergency room, that's what I do. If it's take some deep breaths and go do some qigong, that's what I do. If it's call a friend and ask, hey, did you experience this? That's what I do. But my action is based on that awareness and that acknowledgement of the changes that are happening in my body. So it informs what I do. Perimenopause and menopause and postmenopause have been very different for me in terms of symptoms. There is one or two that still remain, but with perimenopause, there was the uterine fibroids that I had, which I had no idea was attributed to the menopausal transition. But postmenopause is where, or leading up to menopause, and then in postmenopause is where the hot flashes began. So like I said earlier, that time right before those 3 weeks prior to turning 50, the hot flashes just rained down on my body, and they were very consistent for the entire time leading up to the actual pause. And so once the pause, I went into menopause, and then postmenopause, it continued. The hot flashes continued to happen. The hunger, I never felt hungry before. I knew I needed to eat, and I would eat. And so this was very strange for me that I started feeling extremely hungry in the evenings, in the afternoons especially. So then I had to think, oh, something's wrong with the way I'm eating. Nothing's wrong with it. I just needed to change the way that I was eating and how I was looking at my diet, right? So that was one thing. Then I had tinnitus, serious tinnitus, the ringing in my ear. I felt like there was air going through one ear and coming out the next ear, the constant ringing. I had to go to the emergency room for that. The doctor said, "You're fine. You can hear from a mile away." And, I mean, I was happy for that. Also, I started gaining weight, and I don't have a scale in my house, but of course, you pull the pants up, and I was like, wait a minute, it's a little snug. What's happening here? And I noticed that my skin started feeling softer because I usually had muscle in my body. I've always had this kind of lean, muscular type body, not overly muscular, but just, enough. And that started to fade. And I was like, okay, these changes are coming and they are coming swift. Also, my hair started to thin out big time, right? And notice in the front here is where most of the thinning started to occur. I lost most of my eyebrows. So now I'm using, my friend has a company called Lamique, and I use her pencils in there to fill in my eyebrows. But these are the things that external, and I should say physical things that started to happen. And then there were the emotional things. I think sadness was one of them. And it's funny because the sadness coincided with my daughter's departure. I always used to take pride in saying, I'm not a crier. Not that I felt like it was something to be proud of. It was just who I was. I didn't cry easily. And all of a sudden, I started crying. The tears for anything that made me feel emotional, the tears came. I felt incredibly overwhelmed, emotional, and then this enormous sense of sadness when my daughter went away. And during that time, immediately after she left, I cried a lot. And the only thing I can attribute it to was this must be postmenopause. This must be because of the shift in hormones and what's happening to my body. It has to be that. I don't know if it was anything else. My therapist said it wasn't. And it's a combination of a lot of different things that I was going through at the same time. Um, Also, I felt a feeling of loss. Honestly, I was started to mourn who I was. I started to feel like I was missing that Dixie that can spring back into shape and that, can eat anything and would be okay. I started thinking, oh gosh, I miss you. I started like missing my hairline and then all of a sudden appreciating it even more and appreciating what I used to look and feel like even more. But it was also an invitation for me to start taking action to embrace this new me that was starting to unfold and blossom. And so I put my attention there. And once I started doing that, again, back to that acknowledgement, that awareness, acknowledgement, and action, once I started putting those things in place, then everything started to shift in terms of how I began to look at postmenopause and how I began to enjoy it and embrace the journey. I feel excited. I feel grateful. I feel inspired and energized about this phase. And I'll start with grateful first. I feel grateful because it is a blessing to have aged into this space. It's a blessing to be alive and 52 and experiencing a passage of my time and being ushered from one phase to the next. I know it comes with a lot of complications and a lot of complexities, but I've lived to be able to experience this, and I am grateful and appreciative of it, of the experience. I am excited because this is a whole new phase for me. Menopause has coincided with empty nesting. I get to reimagine what my life is like. I get to reimagine the things that I can do, the impact I can make, the relationships I am fostering right now, which are very different types of relationships. The growth that's happening within my personal relationship with my husband, everything has taken on a different meaning, and there is an invitation to amplify my knowledge, and my love and happiness for everything that I do and for my passion and everything that I do. So, and I feel wiser too. I feel so much wiser. There is like incredible wisdom that has come with this stage. And because I have experienced it, I've physically experienced menopause, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. I've been there, done that. I'm still doing it. I feel like this has set me up for the best. I feel like the best of my life is yet to come. And so, because of that, I feel incredibly excited and energized and empowered to see what the rest of this phase has to offer. I like to sit with things. I like to experience things. And for me, that's just how I am. I love science. I love the body. I love biology. I love how the conversations around all of this. And I feel like my body is living proof of life. And or I should say my body is proof of life. And so I like to sit with things. So I sit with them. I have a hot flash. I tell people hot flashes don't bother me so much because I am an island girl from Trinidad and Tobago, and I grew up in the heat. So my body is able to tolerate excessive heat, which is a good thing for me and hot flashes. Even though it's annoying, I can still tolerate the heat. So I sit with it, I allow myself to feel what it feels like, and then I say, well, I can deal with this or I can't deal with it. I don't want to deal with it, but I want to know what it feels like. So when the hot flashes came, I sat with it. I did absolutely nothing. To this day, I've done absolutely nothing. I know for some people they are miserable. For me, I feel uncomfortable at times. So I'm not miserable. I am uncomfortable and I move through the discomfort, the headaches and the migraines, all of it. I've just moved through the discomfort of everything that I felt because on the other side was it's over or it diminished. There are other aspects of menopause that I am concerned about and I am addressing now, and that's things like my bone density and my heart health. Because on my last visit, my cholesterol creeped up a little bit. And so I'm like, okay, you got to watch that. So again, I allowed myself to experience it. Okay, this is what's happening. Little estrogen, little progesterone in the body, see what's happening. Now I get to decide how I want to proceed and what actions I want to take. But I know now because I just allowed things to happen. And then I have self-care practices in place that has helped me tremendously. I my qigong, my restorative practices, my breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, all of these restorative practices have helped me through the anxiety of it all. Looking at what I eat and how I eat, my relationship with food, and this idea of I'm not hungry had to change. It became you have to eat. So paying attention to my diet is and has become super important. Um, Connecting with community, I have found that to be one of the biggest source of support for me. Community with other women who are going through this menopausal transition, whether they are in perimenopause or postmenopause, just having these conversations, the conversations about sexual health, about relationships in the workplace, about relationships with our significant others, our children, our friends, just relationships with ourselves. I get to talk and have conversations within my communities about everything surrounding menopause. There is nothing that's off the table when it comes to menopause. We talk about supplements, we talk about everything. And I do take supplements to support my body, some natural supplements that help me. And I'm also having constant conversations with my healthcare provider. She's wonderful and I trust her. And if she tells me, maybe you should consider this, then I'll consider it. And I think it's just leaving the door open and being open for advice, for support around my well-being, but also tuning into my own body and my needs because my needs are unique to me. And what might work for me may not work for someone else, but what works for someone else may not work for me. And so I keep my needs in mind and how my body is responding to menopause. And I move through the experience with that in mind. And so my actions are based on what I need and what my doctor's diagnostics say I need. So self-care is non-negotiable for me. It has to happen every single day. And this is a habit that I cultivated because I left my job for a self-care sabbatical 12 years ago. And so every day I do something to care for my body, mind, or spirit. And so that can come in the form of my Qigong exercises, my deep breaths, my morning prayer, reading one of my devotionals that I have sitting back there, having a conversation with a friend, reading a book or listening to a book, whatever I need to do to ground and center myself and come back into my body where I feel safe is what I do. Because there are so many instances throughout the day where I experience so many out of body experiences, and you know what those are, the things that make you feel unsafe, the things that make you feel ill, the things that make you feel unhappy. And I always consider those out of body experiences. But I bring myself home with some deep breathing or some qigong or just a quiet moment of meditation. And when I come home to my body, I feel safe. I usually also take something called petite pauses. And I started doing this many years ago. One of my Qigong instructors told me about petite pauses. And it's been one of the best things I do. I just stop and a pause. It's like 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, not 20 minutes or 30 minutes, really short. And I just do whatever comes to mind. It might be watching people go by. It might be watching the trees outside. It could be just taking a deep breath or just closing my eyes and daydreaming. It could be envisioning whatever I need to do within that pause that roots and grounds and centers. I also do that because I look at petite pauses like this. Think of a lush green forest, right? With beautiful trees. And there's this big tree that's been there all these years. It's mature, it's rooted and grounded. And, you know, there are storms that come and strong winds that come, and the branches may sway, they may rock, but guess what? They don't break because they're so firmly rooted in the ground. That to me is what these restorative practices and including the petite pauses does for me. I may rock, I may sway, I may bend, but I will not break because I'm so firmly rooted through these practices that I keep coming back to them because that's how I want to feel all the time. Triple A, awareness, acknowledgement, and action. Be in awareness of what's happening with your body. You're going to know. You know when something feels different, right? So tune in. When that headache starts to come once a week or several times a week, pay attention to it. Be in awareness. It's happening. It's not in your head. It's actually happening. The dizziness, whatever you're feeling, whether it's anxiety or sadness or loneliness, tune into that because there is something there and it's trying to tell you something and it's going to inform what you do and how you feel. Acknowledge that it's happening because I know a lot of people are like, oh, no, it's nothing. No, it's all in my head. And so I'm not even going to acknowledge it. Well, if you don't acknowledge it, then there's nothing to do about it, right? So acknowledge that what you feel, what you are attuned to, what you are aware of is actually happening. And then do something about it. Do something about it, whether it's calling your doctor, calling your friend, having a conversation with your significant other, like talk about it. Do something about it because one action is going to inform the next and the next and the next, and you will arrive at your answer, whatever that is. So awareness, acknowledgement, and action is kind of like the foundation for readying yourself to navigate this menopausal transition. And with that, there are beautiful things and experiences that can happen as a result.